Were you inside?
Educators, families, grandparents are campaigning in front of the Science Museum for them to drop fossil fuel sponsorship. And I'm going to pass on the mic to an amazing person who is going to start the proceeding.
Thanks, Caroline. Okay, I'm Alison Greaves and I am the Executive Director of Scientists Warning Foundation. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay. So Scientists Warning is a body of thousands and thousands of scientists globally who have declared a climate and nature emergency. Now, I'm here because I want to talk to you about doing the right thing. I'm here because being here and supporting these people is the right thing to do. 5 years ago, I was running a university and I was distraught and shocked by the fact that so many warnings were being issued and they simply weren't being heeded. They weren't being heeded by governments, they weren't being heeded by organisations. And at that point, to me, it felt that the right thing to do was to step down from my job and to focus on environmental advocacy and activism. And I did that because I feel that universities are not playing their part in terms of the requisite response that's needed on the climate and nature emergency. Now, in working with Scientists for XR, we have been perplexed by the failure of the Science Museum to heed the warnings of the very scientists they purport to support. And in conversations with the Science Museum management team, it's been clear that their position is one whereby they feel that because fossil fuel organisations have so much wealth and influence and expertise, that it's right to engage with them. But there are different ways in which we can engage with fossil fuel organisations. Accepting dirty money from fossil fuel organisations is arguably not an appropriate way of engaging with these organisations. Now, the agreement that the Science Museum have with Adani is with Adani, which is the parent company. It's a company that is inextricably linked with the pretty wing, if you like, the green energy arm of Adani. And I would argue that you can't simply have an arrangement with one entity which is so interrelated with the whole organisation as if that is somehow okay, because it isn't okay. Adani is Adani is Adani.
Hi everyone, my name is Latika and I'm part of the Fossil Free Science campaign, and I'm going to take you through some news stories published since early April which should have made headlines for the Science Museum but didn't. So as Alison has just told you, and I'm going to recap just a little bit, 2.5 years ago, a due diligence report about the Adani Group, a big corporate produced by the Science Museum Group, highlighted several damaging aspects of its coal mining activities on the environment and indigenous communities, as well as allegations of corruption and human and labor rights abuses. But the Science Museum thought that's just a little thing on the side, we don't need to bother about that. Mr. Adani wants to sponsor a green energy exhibition for us and we should go ahead. Then in January this year, in January 2023, the American activist short seller Hindenburg Research published a report called Adani Group, How the World's Third Richest Man is Pulling the Largest Con in Corporate History. Very easy to find on the internet if you look for it. It created a little bit of a flurry, but then life goes on, or does it? Let's look at what happened since April. On 4th April 2023, in a review of this book here, which the Fossil Free Science campaign has released, the Museums Association website noted that the Hindenburg Research report had categorically stated that Adani Green Energy is intricately and distinctly linked with the rest of the Adani Group. On 19th April 2023, an Indian news website, Scroll, stated that the Indian government allowed an Adani-run mine to expand even though the Wildlife Institute recommended against it, and I quote from the report, the Indian government green-lighted the clearance of about 3,000 acres of forest land in Chhattisgarh in central India for the expansion of a coal mine operated by the Adani Group, even though a government-funded study found that coal extraction was not as per the mining plan, and that forest is called Hasdeo Aran. 2 days later, on 21st April 2023, another Indian news portal, the Hindustan Times, had this headline: "The Indian government stops portal to track green impact of projects." And I quote, "Activists and environmentalists who have long used the portal to gather information on how projects are impacting the environment claim that the rationale to stop it appears to be making the system opaque." Why? Another few days later, on 2nd May 2023, London-based net zero investor ran a news headline: "Adani companies booted from United Nations carbon dioxide targets initiative." 3 Adani companies, including Adani Green Energy, it said, had been removed from the UN-backed Science-Based Targets Initiative, the SBTI, and one of SBTI partner organizations is the United Nations Global Compact. Just try to keep this name in mind. On the same day, a headline in The Guardian read, "Green investment funds pushing money into fossil fuels firms." The report said that UK-based BlackRock and LNG are among the asset managers using funds with ESG label to invest in coal, oil, and gas. About 2 weeks later, on 17th May 2023, a website called ESG Clarity carried this headline: "Goldman Funds slashes stakes in Adani from its active ESG portfolios." Goldman, and I quote, "Goldman Funds registered as promoting environmental, social, and governance goals under European Union rules sold about 11.7 million shares in Adani's companies in February." There were others who had left Adani before. Now, on 22nd May 2023, a week later, the website Adani Watch had a news story headlined, "Adani Go Back, Fact-Finding Report on Resistance to Adani's Gondalpura Coal Project," which the report stated will destroy over 500 hectares of fertile farmland and forest in the Indian state of Jharkhand. 5 villages will be severely impacted, over 780 families will be displaced. Villagers told the authors of the report that they have been persecuted by government authorities for having taken such a strong stance against Adani's coal project. Police have charged protesters with various offences. Government assistance for the area's livelihoods have been terminated. The local cooperative had been instructed not to buy rice from the farmers opposed to Adani's project. Still, the protests continue. Then on 5th June 2023, the American Washington Post ran this headline: "India cracks down on critics of coal." The report noted that on 7th September 2022, Indian Tax Authority simultaneously raided 3 seemingly unrelated non-profit organizations without issuing a public statement. But one little-known thread connected the 3 groups. Each was seen by the government to be critical of Gautam Adani, one of India's richest men and political ally of the Prime Minister. And each was seen to be standing in the way of a particularly contentious project, an Adani-operated coal mine in a lush forest in central India called Hasdeo Arang, which I mentioned earlier. Documents reveal government anger over opposition of Indian non-profits and their Western allies to the project. Another 2 days later, on 7th June 2023, Adani Watch again had a news story headlined, "Desperate families displaced by Adani's Suliyari coal mine struggle to get lawful compensation." In the central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh, over 1,300 households are to be displaced by the Suliyari coal mine, a project run by the Adani Group. Many have battled to receive the compensation they are due. Poverty looms for people who have farmed and lived off the bounty of the forest for generations. They have lived very sustainable lives, which we are destroying to create some other sustainable projects, apparently. Establishment of basic dwellings for resettlement has been delayed. Faulty new constructions are crumbling. Meanwhile, few compensation funds have been received and are dwindling quickly. And on 13th June 2023, I'm nearly there to today, Bloomberg announced the Adani in talks for first major debt refinancing after Hindenburg. The news site noted that Adani wanted to refinance up to $3.8 billion debt, and banks such as the Barclays and Standard Chartered in the UK are ready to do this. And just 2 days ago, on 15th June 2023, a news website, Business Today, ran this headline: Adani Green Energy among top 10 renewable companies globally for ESG performance. Adani Green Energy has been placed in the Prime B band, recognizing its robust ESG disclosure practices and high levels of transparency. And one of the companies that Adani is trying to quote in this is the UN Global Compact. Remember that name? Just to recall that on 2nd May 2023, Adani Green Energy and 2 other companies had been removed from the UN-backed science-based targets. So the story doesn't add up. Or does it? What do you all think here? Should the Science Museum be planning to run a green energy exhibition sponsored by Adani Green Energy, which is part of the Adani Group? Or should it follow the example of the people in Gondalpura to shout, Adani go back, we don't want you here. Do we want Adani here? Yes or no? Can you answer? No! Thank you.
Hi there everyone. My name is Lucy. I'm an astrophysicist and I also love the Science Museum. I always have. When I was at school, I would come here pretty much every weekend, and if I'm honest, it was only ever to see one thing. Right at the end of the Space Gallery, that little piece of moon rock suspended in nitrogen. Just looking at it, that tiny piece of another world, it inspired me to always reach beyond what those around me thought was possible. And being autistic put a lot of limits on what others thought was possible of me. I never thought I would have to be here in this way, protesting against the place that inspired my younger self. The coal giant Adani, who will sponsor the Science Museum's new Energy Revolution Gallery, were pitched to Sir Ian Blatchford, the director of the Science Museum Group, as corrupt, fraudulent, dishonest with its energy claims, green energy claims, and a threat to indigenous communities. That full report was never shown to the museum's board of trustees. To have Adani sponsor this museum, the home of that piece of moon rock, is a twisted joke at every young person who walks in there, funding something designed to excite them about the future and its possibilities, with the money of those who are actively destroying that future. Ian Blatchford would like to paint us as misinformed activists. That Adani Green, the subsidiary company who will be sponsoring the new gallery in the museum, are entirely separate from the Adani Group. Well, that's despite the fact that the Adani Group have been using shares in Adani Green as collateral for a $300 million loan for their coal project in Australia. So, totally separate, yeah? Thanks to that little moon rock in that building behind me, I've spent a decade training to be a scientist, trained to scour through information, past the fake news, for the truth. Thanks to this museum, Mr. Blatchford, if you're listening, I'm not misinformed. Are you?
Hello everyone, my name is Sam and I'm 18 years old. And I'm here because I'm really worried about my future. We know the science. We cannot have any new oil and gas. According to the IPCC, IEA, UN, this is fact. And yet the Science Museum, the very people who should be listening to their fellow scientists, are not believing it. And it's tragic that this is the situation that we find ourselves in. And I'm going to talk about Equinor, which is Norway's state-owned oil company, which is currently seeking approval for the Rosebank oil field, which would have the CO2 emissions equivalent to the lowest 28 income countries combined. This oil field would be disastrous for the climate, and it would also cost the taxpayer billions in subsidies. We cannot let the Rosebank oil field go ahead, but Equinor, the very company that is trying to pursue this oil field, sponsors the Science Museum. The Science Museum, which is supposed to teach us about the climate crisis and about its solutions, and yet it is taking money from a company that is currently destroying our climate. Thank you.